everyone, and welcome to another episode of From the Mount, a podcast from the campus of Mount Perrin Christian School. I'm your host, Steve Kyle. With me, Viola Lucier. Hi, Viola. How are you?
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
Great.
It's been a hot minute.
It has been a hot minute that we've been able to sit down and record. And this one's going to be, I think both of us are in agreement. This is going to be a kind of a powerful episode. I think people might have read the description of what this episode is about. And they're listening for a couple reasons. One, because they maybe know our guest, Katherine, and we'll let her introduce herself in just a second. Or they're interested in this idea we're going to be talking about. That was a great reminder when you talk about prayer and the power of prayer. I don't think there is a that I'm aware of. This is in the top probably 5 when you talk about miracles and answers to prayers that I can think of that I'm personally connected to. Now, Correct. Of course, you hear stuff about like, oh, there was somebody in
chicken soup for the soul kind of stuff.
Yeah, where somebody was raised from the dead on some foreign field, and I was like, well, I wasn't there.
Exactly.
And so, but it's an amazing story about prayer, about community, about a lot of stuff. And so we're going to get right to it because there's a lot of info that comes with it. And so, so you're listening because you might go, well, I think I know Katherine. She shared this one with me and told me to listen to it. I do think this one will be shared a lot. But our guest today is Miss Katherine Pfeiffer. Katherine, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, first time being on the podcast, right? Yeah, and we're glad you're here. Maybe, hopefully, not the last time you'll be on the podcast, but
no, you're a wealth of knowledge.
Yes, yeah. And so, for people that don't know you, Katherine, they have no idea who Katherine Pfeiffer is. Let our people know really quickly, like who you are, both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
Let people know who you are. So while they're driving, running, whatever they're doing, they're like, oh, I vibe with her. Yeah. So who are you, Katherine?
My name's Katherine Pfeiffer, and I've been at Mount Perrin. I think this is my 7th year. I think it's number 7.
Yeah. I was already here when you got here, Katherine.
Yes.
Correct?
I think for 1 year.
I was. Yeah.
Yes.
This is 8 years for me. So this is your 7th.
7.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I taught in the middle school language arts when I first got here, and then high school English, and now I'm in a new role where I am a learning technology specialist for our lower and middle school students, families, and teachers, which is so fun. And then personally, I'm a mom. I have Amelia, she's 4 in the cottage here, and John Martin, who is almost 2. He'll be 2 in December. And then, I know, isn't that wild?
Been fast.
I know, that little potato
fast
growing
but
up.
Small.
Yeah,
or
I know.
Fast but short, yeah.
I'm married to Michael. He's an airline pilot, and we are from Marietta and started dating an SAT prep class in high school.
Stop it.
Yes. So cute.
Wow. An SAT prep class.
I would have been crying. Was he consoling you because you were crying? Because I would have been crying.
He did so well on that test, and I really did not. So
Yeah, you were. He was focused on the test. Maybe you weren't.
Yeah.
Did you meet him before the test? Maybe that's what it was. And an SAT, I didn't even take the SAT, let alone take an SAT prep class.
Yes.
I was the ACT guy, just so people know.
That's how you know you're from the Midwest.
Yeah. I'm a Midwest.
So we have been in Marietta. We were raised in Marietta. We lived a couple different places, and now we're back, and we're so glad to be here.
Well, where did you go to college?
I went to the University of Alabama.
And then?
Roll Tide.
And then Harvard.
You're the only person I know that has gone to Harvard.
Oh, that's not. You don't know. There's some other people that
I'm
we
sure
know.
there are.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I don't know them like that.
Yeah. I don't know if I've sat in the same room with them.
Exactly.
Did some Harvard. So and me, I actually turned them down. They tried twice, but I was like, no.
You're like, guys.
They were like, have you taken the SAT? And I'm like,
no.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Are you a Dunkin' or Starbucks girl?
Oh, Starbucks all the way. Dunkin',
really?
No.
Oh,
that was the worst part of living in Boston. Was Dunkin' everywhere.
Yes.
I disagree at least when it comes to. And this is a separate podcast episode, but I like Dunkin' their black coffee hot. Mm-hmm. Anything they do ice, sorry, Dunkin' is not very good at all.
Yeah.
Their black hot coffee, and they have midnight. So they have the darkest, blackest of black coffees you can request.
So
I
straight
get
cocaine.
And they also have small, medium, large, and extra large. So I like a place that has an extra large cup of coffee, and it's extreme. So it's extra large, dark black, and literally you can, I mean, you'll
That's
lower
a gallon.
your 40 time by 3 seconds. You will
It's the size of
Clean
a
your
toddler.
whole house.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's the size of a toddler.
Oh my goodness.
It is. It's great. So, but anyway, so Katherine, first of all, awesome. It is great to have you on the podcast, and I kind of want to get right to why you're on the podcast. And again, we could have you for lots of reasons, as an education specialist, as what it's like to be married to a pilot. I don't know if that's a good episode or not, but we could do all that. Being mom, but you have and being kind of a part of this community while you went through this on this journey, really. As a outsider, and of course in preparation for this, I didn't even know all that we're going to talk about today. And it's a powerful story. I mean, of whether it's, we talk about a miracle, you talk about prayer, you talk about, and it, of course it has to do with John Martin. So your second child. So let's get into it. Let's give some background and some context about, becoming a mom for you, and really how that was so crazily significant in the John Martin story. Mm-hmm. So, which I don't think I knew until I was reading. I was like, no way.
Yeah.
And doing that. So kind of get us started.
Yeah, for sure. So, my husband and I, we're about to celebrate 8 years. 8 years of being married?
You better
That's
get it right.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, Michael.
I know. I have to think about it. Sorry, Michael.
Feels just like yesterday.
Yeah, it's all good. Love you. And we got pregnant with Amelia in 2020. Obviously, that was a significant year in the history of our world, and so it was a weird
Just a
pregnancy.
little bit.
But I got to teach. I got to teach middle school during that time, and I taught from my couch in leggings while pregnant, which was great. So there are perks. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we had a very normal pregnancy other than the COVID stuff. And Amelia arrived 5 weeks early. So she arrived at 35 weeks, which was kind of jarring. We had, at that point, the baby is not fully cooked. So we were, it was pretty unnerving.
And there was really no reason. Like, you felt fine. It was a normal pregnancy. You're like,
totally
baby's here, and there was no reason. Okay.
Yeah. And it was Michael and I are both pretty chill, rational people. So we were like, okay, this is just what we do. Like, we go to the hospital, we have a baby. And then Amelia stays in the NICU for 9 days, which in terms of like a NICU stay, that's not long, but it was devastatingly long for us. We, didn't have this experience where we got to take our baby home. And so Amelia's discharged from the NICU after 9 days, and she comes home, no health problems. Like, the child is fine. And she only was in the NICU so she could grow a little bit more.
Sure.
So easy peasy. Not a big deal. And then Amelia comes home. And so I'm a mom and Michael's a dad, and it was a great experience. And now she's 4 and in the cottage.
Yeah. And so then at some point, like every parent, you're like, wow, that was great. That was
do it
easy.
again. Yeah.
Let's have another baby. I know. It's one of those after it comes, you're like, what were we thinking?
Exactly.
But then you're like, you forget about all the stuff. But again, it was an easy one. And we're like, all right, God, we're ready to have another baby, which obviously you were like, let's
do it.
Yeah, let's have a baby. And you did.
Yeah. So we get pregnant with John Martin, and I tell Michael over FaceTime because it's less special than your first. I'm like, now we're pregnant. Less of like a hurrah.
Because he was flying somewhere. He was obviously somewhere else. Yeah.
Like less of a hurrah moment. But we were so excited. And baby number 2, and we found out it's a boy, super excited. So I go to my first OB appointment, and I say, hey, I'm pregnant. Been there, done that. Just tell me what I need to do.
Yeah.
And they said, well, because Amelia came early and we don't have an explanation, you have to go to a specialist. And I was not pleased about that. That's time off of work. It's extra money. It's just like, I'm like, she's
really?
like, the kid is fine.
Correct.
Like, she's okay. We don't need this. And so I, complain about it for a little while, and they say like, all right, well, I know God gave people smart brains, so let's let someone with a smart brain look at this baby. That's fine.
And confirm what we already know. Everything's fine.
Yeah. And so I go to a specialist, and I sit down by myself. Michael's not there because this appointment is going to be very routine and fine. And they pull up the ultrasound, and the ultrasound is almost all black. Like, it looks like there's not a baby in there. And I was like, I'm very throwing up all the time. There's a baby in there for sure. Right. Like, that's like
doesn't match.
Yeah. This isn't Taco Tuesday. Okay.
Yeah. And I said, where is he? And they said, oh no, he's in there. What you're seeing is his bladder. And I said, what do you mean? And if you look at the picture of the ultrasound, there's this huge black circle in the middle of the screen that is 2.5 times the size of his head.
Yeah. Which you
And-
showed me this picture in prep earlier on your phone, which I had not seen prior to this. And it's shocking. And I don't know if we'll be able to somehow splice it in here to the podcast video. We'll give that a shot. But it's one of those things like, for me, I would have just said there's actually no baby here because it was the black dark circle is so large. It almost just like this big open space. Yeah. Honestly, that's how shocking at least again for me, this picture was.
Is it supposed to be just like a dot?
Yeah, if
Okay.
that. I mean,
If that, yes.
like you just are supposed to see like a baby that's like, when you look at an ultrasound, like the contrast, like the baby is like the whiter, lighter parts,
Yes.
and then and it was all black, and it was crazy. And so I sat down at that appointment without my husband because again, it was supposed to be a really routine appointment, and the OB said, or the specialist said, maybe he just hasn't like released urine today. Like maybe this is a fluke, maybe it's not, or maybe it's like totally fine. And then he said, but if it's not, here's what you're looking at. You're looking at kidney damage, lung damage, limb difference and damage, Down syndrome, like all of these crazy things that we were like, wait a second, this is a normal pregnancy. Like, this is fine. Why is this happening? And all of this happens. The only reason that we like have an ultrasound at this point, most women get an ultrasound at 20 weeks. And this was way before that. This was like at 12 weeks. And so I was obviously really shocked. And so, of course.
Which, by the way, you would not have gotten had Amelia
right.
not come early.
Yep.
You would have never even gone in for this initial one.
Correct.
Which is right alone, it begins to contextualize why in the world, God, did Amelia come early when everything was going normal?
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah. And so we sit through another scary appointment where our doctor says you should consider having an abortion. And that was a no for us. That's not something that our family believes in. We believe in the sanctity of life. And so we said, no, what else you got? And so they basically said that the only solution for his prognosis at this point is for his bladder to get really, really bad and then fly out to Houston so that they could put a shunt in that would help drain his bladder, but it only works 30% of the time. And we were like, I just don't like this. And so we're going home and we're reading more about it. And essentially what's happening is his bladder's not draining. And if your bladder's not draining, then you aren't producing amniotic fluid. Amniotic fluid is what keeps the baby alive, develops all the lungs. It's like
essential.
Really, I can't do it without it. And so he doesn't have amniotic fluid. His lungs aren't developing. There's fluid in his kidneys. He has potential limb difference, bilateral club feet, which is when like his feet are turned in. And so we're going home. And of course, like they say, don't go on the internet. So Michael and I were like, got it, Google. And, immediately did it. And so we learn all this stuff. And I don't like the solutions they're proposing. I don't like just waiting around to see how bad it gets. His bladder could explode. His kidneys, they could be just completely full of fluid. We just don't like it. And so that night I go to women's group at my church, and we have a sweet friend who is a former nurse, and her name's Donna. And she saw me getting a little teary, and she said, what's going on? And so I told her, we had announced our pregnancy at this point. But again, it's a second child, so it was kind of like, whatever. Just a different experience.
Fanfare.
And so she was like, what's going on? And I told her. And she said, well, I'm a former nurse. And I said, yes. And she said, I now work with a genetics company that, works with doctors all over the place. And I'm actually working with a doctor who's piloting a new surgery that is not approved by the FDA, that's a different kind of shunt to fix your baby's problem. And it works 95% of the time.
In your Bible study at your church.
At my church,
And again, people can listen to that and go, well, what a great coincidence. Isn't it great? And of course,
that's not how that works.
Michael, your community, you guys, of course, not only have you made the decision, hey, this in an abortion, not an option for us. God, we understand the importance of it. There's a reason we're walking this road. We're going to commit to prayer in this. And then this conversation happens, again, one of those like, oh, isn't that great? What a small world.
Nope.
Yeah, exactly. For you guys to go, what? Hey, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah. And so she said, do you want me to like contact him? And I said, yeah, I do. So
You got his number now?
yeah, right now. And so we get all my ultrasounds and testing to the doctor, and he calls us. And I remember this so specifically. I was in leggings and a T-shirt at Mount Perrin, ready to board the bus for high school retreat. And I get a call from the doctor at 8:35 in the morning, and he says, you need to get on a plane now. And there were 2 students in my room at the time, and I said, I got to go. Y'all figure it out.
Yeah.
I got to go.
And they did. And they did.
No, they did a great job.
They did. Yeah, they're actually still in that room.
Yeah.
No.
No one
Is she
told them to
coming
leave.
back?
Yeah. Yeah. So we got the call at 8:35. We're on a plane at 11:05. We've never packed or driven to the airport faster. And we were in Miami. And Dr. Quintero is the name of the surgeon. He did ultrasounds and amniocentesis and tests and all the stuff. And the last hurdle for all of this to make sure that I was a candidate for this surgery was to make sure that the testing was anatomical and not genetic. So if it was genetic, then there's basically nothing that they could have done.
Got it.
If it's anatomical, just like a blockage in his body, then like we were good to go. And so we, called our church community, called this Mount Perrin prayer community, and said, please pray that the testing comes back anatomical. And it did. And so, yeah, I know. So another prayer. Answered for sure. And so we have the surgery. It's in utero surgery at 17 weeks. So I'm awake during the surgery.
Stop.
Yes, numbed with lidocaine, like from the dentist, and that's it. And singing Great Is Thy Faithfulness with my anesthesiologist nurse, who is like standing by my head and just with me. And it was really sweet.
Could you see it on the screen?
No, they draped my face so that I couldn't see it. So all I could see was blue. But I want to find it on YouTube somewhere. Like,
Well,
he was teaching people. So
I had
really?
an
Was he?
amniocentesis, and so you could see everything.
yes.
And my husband was like, sir. And they like almost kicked him out because of that.
Yeah. You're not doing that right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Left.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, I would.
No, I could see the amniocentesis, but not the actual surgery. But like they're going in with these little chopsticks,
Yeah.
operating on a baby that's inside my stomach. Like,
It's
And
just
he's teaching the
crazy.
whole time.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, wild.
Yeah.
So just crazy. And so get out of that surgery. It's all good. I go home. I'm on bed rest for like 2 days, and then I'm back at work, and that's it. And we have several follow-up ultrasounds. The shunt is in place. It's draining his bladder. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Women in a community that I'm a part of now who have the standard shunt that works 30% of the time, they have that surgery 3 and 4 times before a baby comes because the shunt keeps falling out.
Oh, wow.
And like this one just stays, and it's great.
But why are we still using the shunt that keeps falling out?
I know,
Like, why
FDA,
isn't
come
everybody
on,
just
I know.
using the?
The Dr. Q one.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
I know. Michael and I are so vocal about getting women into his office because it worked so well. So anyways, we go about a normal pregnancy. It's totally fine. And on my dad's birthday, I'll never forget this because he texted me and he said, I don't want to share a birthday with that baby. My water breaks. And it breaks at 29 weeks, which if you know anything about baby gestation, that baby is not ready at 29 weeks. And so they are thankfully able to stop labor, and they said, it's 29 weeks. Ideally, you're here until 40 weeks, so hunker down. You're going to be in the hospital for 10 weeks.
Yay.
And yes.
Yeah.
I know. Well, Michael got a Fire Stick and put it on the TV, and I ordered a bunch of stuff off of Amazon and just said, all right, we're just going to get a bunch of reading done, and it's fine. I graded my students' final exams in the hospital. It was awesome. So I'm in the hospital ready to go. Some friends come in and decorate my room for Christmas. It was really sweet. And then 6 days later, John Martin is born.
Wow.
At 30 weeks. Less than 3 pounds. And like that kid is the size of a hamster. Like he is so tiny. And yeah, no epidural. And kid got
Well,
here
I mean, with how small though, too, I was it obviously when he's born. This isn't a heavy labored birth, is it? I mean, is it a long?
Well, contractions, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I'm not saying it didn't hurt. I'm saying was it long? Like some people are like, it was 20 hours of constant.
No, 20 minutes. Michael almost didn't make it. Michael was speeding down the highway because he was home with Amelia. I was at the hospital by myself. So, only about 20 minutes. And so he got there, and a lot of really well-intentioned doctors and nurses sat at my bedside and basically told me what was wrong, and we knew what was wrong, but now that he's here early, it's really wrong, right? Like his lungs are underdeveloped, he has an infection, we're looking at brain bleeds, underdeveloped blood vessels, all kinds of things like that. And so he goes to Kennestone's NICU for about a day, and then he's transferred to CHOA downtown. So, which we knew. They had a spot reserved for him. He's in their highest level NICU in the state of, it's the highest level NICU in the state of Georgia. So he's receiving the most intensive care.
Yeah, the Children's Hospital of Atlanta. For those that might be not familiar with CHOA,
Yes.
we have listeners in Alaska according to our data.
Oh,
yes.
So
yeah.
in case they don't know what CHOA is, that's what that is.
Yes.
And it's a phenomenal children's hospital.
Yes, it
phenomenal.
is. Yes. If you're ever looking for a great place to give back, highly recommend Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And so he gets transferred down there, downtown. He's receiving really excellent care. Every doctor that comes across him says, I read his chart and I like cannot believe how well he's doing. Like, I read all of this data about him. I read his story. I read about his in utero surgery, all of that. I just cannot believe how well he's doing. And he really is. We get to hold him on day like 4 or 5 after he's born because we hadn't been able to hold him at that point. And so he has several surgeries in the hospital to kind of correct some issues. So the shunt is taken out. They do lots of exploratory surgeries to figure out why his bladder isn't draining. He is born with bilateral club feet, so his feet are almost tucked up into his little body, and so he has to have casts put on them and all kinds of things like that. And so we just have lots of surgeries and procedures, and it's a really tough time in the NICU, but we meet a lot of really sweet people. And then in January, John Martin is still in the NICU, and my dad dies, just really unexpectedly. He's a pilot too, and he was flying a trip in Dublin and just died. He just had we think it's a pulmonary embolism, but just died. And so I have a baby in the hospital that I can't stay with. I have a dad who I loved so dearly, and praise God, he was such an example of Christ-like servant leadership for our family. And so we know exactly where he is. But and so all of that, and so we just are kind of paralyzed with this, unknown. We don't really know how to move forward, what to do, and all we can do every day is pray and be joyful and take care of a baby.
Yeah, because the reality is you have to be thinking, as I know I would, God, have you forgotten about us? Like, God, we know you've done all these things, but really, like, Dad, and I remember, by the way, the service for your dad. I was there. It was
sweet.
beautiful.
Yeah.
What a powerful service for him. And I didn't know him, but I felt like at the end, boy, you got this awesome picture of him. But
yeah, it was great.
you have to, at some point, you, Michael, got to be feeling like, God, really, what else can this? And you never really want to ask that question. But you battled some of that, I imagine.
Yeah. And I mean, the verse that we really clung to was James 1:2-4. It's the count it all joy, my brothers, when you face trials of various kind, for we know the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And that's what we clung to the whole time. And so that happens. And again, the Mount Perrin community just really rallies behind us. This whole time while we're in the NICU, we have gotten so many gift cards, so many offers to babysit Amelia. The number of people who reached out with really intentional prayer requests or prayers that they had been praying for our family. And it just was so precious. A staff member babysat Amelia during Dad's funeral. This community was so precious for us. And alongside our church community, we just felt really tangibly loved, which was really sweet for us.
So then they give you a kind of a diagnosis. And then take us through, hey, diagnosis, lifelong, and then what God, what the reality of all that actually was.
Yeah, it's really cool. So he gets an official diagnosis, and it has a lot to do with his urinary tract. And basically they said, you need to quit your job. We're going to give you all this medical training. He's going to require lifelong medical care. And until he can do the medical care himself, you have to do it for him. And so most kids, that's like kindergarten and first grade. And I love work. I love working at Mount Perrin. And so I was really nervous.
That was devastating.
It was tough.
I remember hearing
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I vividly remember that for sure.
I was like, how can I work from home, Mount Perrin?
Yeah.
So went through all that training, and he's about 6 months old, and we are doing medical care for him all of the time. He's on so many medications, some really intensive intervention to like get his bladder to drain every time. And so we start noticing, obviously I'm talking about a lot of tender body parts here, so y'all can read between the lines of some of it, but at about 6 months old, we start noticing a lot of wet diapers, which should not be happening with his condition, which honestly was like kind of a perk of, having a new baby, not a lot of wet diapers. But we start noticing a lot of wet diapers, and we were like, oh, that's weird. That shouldn't happen. And so we communicate with our doctor and take a lot of really good data. I'm a good data girl. And we start realizing after some ultrasounds and some testing that his body is healed. He requires zero medical intervention. And we asked our doctor, we said, what's the likelihood of this not being a fluke? And they said, we literally have never seen it. The only time that babies heal their bodies like this is in utero.
Wow.
And the only case I could find of anybody on the internet who had healed like this was like some random 13-year-old in India. Like, it just doesn't happen. And so today, the only medical intervention that he needs is for his feet. So he only has this little boot. He sleeps with like little boots and bars until he's 3, or he can learn to take them off himself, which we're getting pretty close to him taking them off himself. And so that's his only medical intervention. And the amount of doctors who have said, like, I just cannot believe what this kid has come from and, you know, what he's been through to now have almost nothing is just a real life miracle.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And it's always interesting when I think about, you know, because we have amazing doctors and we have amazing doctors who are believers in God and those things. But we also have a lot of in the medical field that are not. And I just wonder what they, you know, how you can just ignore that and go, well, you know, it's possible, like on some things, never happened before, or probably will never happen again. But it was, as opposed to just saying, listen, I mean, we can't. I mean, there's just no way this baby should even be here, let alone be doing as well, and one day will be walking and functioning and living and a testimony of what God did. It's just, I always, and again, maybe I just don't know what it's like to think in a context outside of the presence and the existence of a God. But and no doubt people be asking some questions after that. They're like, honey, I'm really wrestling with, you know, the Pfeiffer baby we told you about? Well, guess what? It shouldn't be there. It's not only here, but I mean, I don't know. It's a...
Well, and now he's a smiley guy.
I know. He's so cute.
He is.
He's so cute. He wasn't supposed to walk until he's 2, and that boy is not quite 2. Started walking at 18 months, and he's in everything.
Yeah. You're like, I wish he could have waited till he was 2. This is so stressful. Yeah, when they start doing that. And so, all right. So, again, if you're listening and maybe you're being encouraged, you know, because this wasn't one of those episodes for us to go, oh man, that's just so hard. And I hope that doesn't, you know, if maybe you're not pregnant yet or you're trying to, like, I hope that's not my story. Of course, that's certainly, and when I say that, like, I don't want to have those kinds of stresses in life. That's certainly not the focus of this right here. If you're listening, there are so many things that you could take from this. I mean, I'll never be pregnant. We're done having children. We have them. But I even read this last night. Well, miracles do happen. We do know that.
All things are possible.
But I was even last night in bed as I was processing all this and doing it. I was just like, what another God, just real life example of your presence and the fact that you don't just listen to prayers. You're not just up there going, yeah, that's great, and but you get involved and you answer prayer and you. So if I'm listening to this right now, Katherine, what would you give me some takeaways, maybe for you, but also for that family member, that person who's listening right now, whether they're a part of our community or not, about that? What would you say?
Yeah, so the first one you brought up a little bit earlier, the only reason that John Martin is alive is because Amelia came early, right? Like, that is the only reason that he's alive, because otherwise we would not have had that early ultrasound. And so I would just encourage listeners to think about their story and think about the hard things that were, like, honestly just really inconvenient, disappointing at the time, and think about how God's going to use that to demonstrate his faithfulness. Thing number 2, we would not have gotten connected with the doctor that saved John Martin's life if we were not in a church community.
So that's actually my takeaway from your story, because sometimes I don't tell people, like, exactly what's going on. And there are, I mean, first of all, we were made to be in community with each other and made to serve and love. And so I encourage anybody who feels like they don't want to be a part of a community, or that they don't want to, it's not about gossiping and everybody knowing your business. It's just about, like, how can people help, you know, and what do you need? And you would be surprised at how many people God has put in your life for that specific reason, you know?
Yeah.
And you just have to capitalize on it.
Yeah, and my family just moved recently, and now we live 2 doors down from Donna, the nurse who got us connected.
Stop it.
Hey, Donna.
Yeah. Hey, what a cool reminder.
Get
You know,
out of town.
when you're walking through. So I think if you're listening and you're in the midst of a struggle, just coming out of a struggle, and you're trying to just figure out, God, why, and all those are questions. And it's one of those you'll look back maybe 10 years from now and go, I see exactly why now. And God, that's why I consider it all joy.
That's right.
Not it's going to be easy and life's going to be the best and it's going to be smooth coasting when you follow Jesus. He actually says the opposite. But it's, all right, God, I'm going to trust that you work all things together for good to those that love you and are called according to your purpose. And so, God, I'm going to trust that whatever I'm going through right now might come into clarity. Here's the other thing. It might not.
Right.
You know, maybe one of those this side of eternity, we don't, but you look at the conversation you may have had with someone at the hospital led them to an interaction with Christ that led them to this place in faith, and then which brought them to Christ. And you don't know that until the other, you're in heaven one day.
My eyes are sweating.
Yeah, we've gotten to have so many great conversations with medical professionals about our faith and why we believe what we believe. And there's been several people who have said, like, yep, right on with you. I love Jesus too. Let's talk about that. And then some other people who say, like, wow, what a cool coincidence.
Yeah.
You know, so it's been fun.
And then you mentioned community as well. That just being a really big part of it.
Yeah, so the Mount Perrin community in general has obviously been a huge part of this, with very specific prayers that they have prayed for us, very tangible ways that they have reached out and just loved on our family. And the ways that they still continue to do that, because the reality is John Martin is fine, but we also have had 6 doctor's appointments this week for follow-ups. You know, so we still require a little bit of that. And so the way that this community has come alongside us and just really asked us how they can be praying for us and what they can do for us, and it's all because we love and serve the same God and we share those values, and that's really sweet. And when we talk about in 1 John 5, John talks about how following God's commandments is not burdensome, and it is difficult, right?
Yeah.
It is difficult to give sacrificially and to give of your time, and it is difficult to step out of that, but it's not burdensome because his yoke is easy. And so when we do that, it's been a blessing to me to see that community come alongside us and remind myself about how I can be intentionally stepping into other people's lives that are in a different season.
Yeah, that is. And community oriented is one of our focal points here is
really
trying
crying.
to be that way. Yeah.
It's hot in here. It's sweating.
She's really crying.
Well, it is. And I don't, when you really stop and think about that, and in context, we both have children who are older, and for the most part, I mean, we had some medical issues with our oldest years ago, but it was nothing at this, nothing where we were, oh my goodness, God, this is so critical and crucial. And I think it's just a powerful reminder of one, God, miracles aren't just for the Bible.
Yeah, that's right.
Miracles are every day, and they're happening, and God is real and involved and active. And prayer doesn't need if it needs practice.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, we just need to do it more, and we learn to be drawn to our knees during times like this. And then when you talk about the power of community, it's essential. You know, when you think of so many people like I got this, but Lone Ranger had Tonto. You know what I mean? You know? So, and again, I'm one of these, like, I just don't want to share needs.
Yes.
And listen, we're called to do that because we're called to be in community. And I think this is a great reminder of, know what, just share. Share those needs with people and let them be a part of that story and what God's doing as well.
It's okay to be vulnerable.
For sure,
yeah.
It is.
Scary, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope if you're listening, you were encouraged today by Catherine's story, and hopefully one day you'll get to not only meet Katherine, but little John Martin as well,
yes.
as he'll be wandering these halls.
Yeah, 2 years.
Soon.
And then he'll be tall John Martin.
Tall John.
Exactly. And a living testament to God and his faithfulness. Katherine, thanks for coming on and being vulnerable, sharing your story.
Oh, such a joy.
It was awesome, and it was great. If you want to hear more stories like that or have ideas or questions or follow-up about our podcast, you can email us at fromthemount@mtperrinschool.com. That's fromthemount@mtperrinschool.com. Viola, always a pleasure. Thanks.
Yes.
And thank you for listening to another episode of From the Mount.